You open the bag telling yourself you'll have just one. You know how this ends. You always know how this ends. 10 minutes later, the bag is empty and your hand is still reaching out of habit. You didn't decide to eat all of it. Somewhere along the way, the deciding stopped. But the real answer for why this happens is far stranger than a lack of willpower. Your brain isn't broken. It's ancient. It's running code written for a world that no longer exists, a world where a food this dense in salt, fat, and sugar simply didn't exist in nature. Your ancestors never faced a bag of chips. They faced scarcity. And scarcity built a brain that treats abundance like an emergency worth exploiting to the very last bite. To understand why, you have to go back to a Dutch biologist named Nico Tinbergen. In the 1950s, Tinbergen was studying birds, not humans. He noticed something odd while researching greylag geese. If he gave a mother goose an oversized fake egg, painted in exaggerated colors, she would abandon her own real egg to sit on the fake one instead. The fake egg wasn't a better egg. It was an exaggerated one, bigger, brighter, more extreme than anything her instincts had ever evolved to expect. Tinbergen called this a supernormal stimulus, a signal so amplified that it hijacks an instinct built for something smaller and more modest. Birds weren't the only ones vulnerable to this trick. Tinbergen found the same pattern in butterflies, fish, even beetles that would try to mate with beer bottles because the bottle's color and shine exaggerated the signals real females gave off. The instinct wasn't stupid. It was just never built to handle something this extreme. Here's the uncomfortable question. What if you're the goose? Decades later, a Harvard psychologist named Deirdre Barrett took Tinbergen's idea and pointed it directly at modern human life. In her research, Barrett argued that humans have engineered supernormal stimuli for almost every one of our evolved cravings. Pornography exaggerates a mating instinct. Video games exaggerate a hunting and achievement instinct. And processed food exaggerates the most ancient craving of all, the drive to seek calories wherever they can be found. Think about what your ancestors were actually optimized for. For most of human history, food was unpredictable. A ripe fruit today didn't guarantee food tomorrow. Fat and sugar were rare, valuable, and worth gorging on the moment you found them, because your body had no idea when the next opportunity would come. The brain that craves fat, salt, and sugar wasn't a flaw. It was a survival advantage. It kept your ancestors alive through winters, droughts, and lean seasons, but that brain was calibrated for a world of scarcity. It was never calibrated for a bag of chips engineered in a lab. Modern snack food isn't just food anymore. It's a supernormal stimulus, deliberately built to exceed anything your ancestors ever encountered. Food scientists have a term for the exact ratio of salt, sugar, and fat that maximizes craving without triggering the brain's natural sense of fullness. They call it the bliss point. It's not an accident. It's math, tested and refined across thousands of consumer trials until a chip hits your tongue with a level of intensity nothing in nature ever produced. So why can't you stop at one? Because your brain isn't just responding to taste. It's responding to a reward chemical called dopamine. And this is where a neuroscientist named Nora Volkow becomes essential to the story. As director of the National Institute on Drug Abuse, Volkow spent years studying how food and dopamine interact in the brain using brain imaging technology. Her research found that highly processed, calorie-dense foods trigger dopamine release in the same reward circuitry activated by addictive substances. Not identical, but strikingly similar in pattern. Here's the twist. Dopamine isn't actually the chemical of pleasure. It's the chemical of wanting. It's what drives you to reach for the next chip before you've even finished chewing the last one. Your brain isn't rewarding you for eating. It's compelling you to keep seeking, because seeking calories used to mean survival. Under Volkow's findings, every bite of a hyper-palatable snack doesn't satisfy the craving. It renews it. The bag doesn't get less interesting the more you eat. In some ways, it gets more compelling, because each dopamine spike primes your brain to expect the next one. This is why the craving barely responds to fullness. Your stomach can be completely satisfied while your brain is still screaming for more. Two separate systems, running two separate programs, and in the modern world, the ancient one usually wins. Now here's where it gets stranger still. This isn't limited to food. Once you understand supernormal stimuli, you start noticing them everywhere. Social media notifications exaggerate the ancient instinct to track your standing within a group. A red notification badge is engineered the same way a chip is engineered, tuned to trigger a small hit of anticipation every single time. Your ancestors evolved to care deeply about social approval, because in small tribal groups, social standing could mean the difference between support and abandonment. Now that instinct gets triggered dozens of times a day by a screen that was never meant to fulfill it. The chip and the notification are cousins. Different packaging, same exploited wiring. So is this hopeless? Not exactly. Understanding the mechanism changes your relationship to it. When you reach for the fifth handful without noticing, you're not failing at self-control. You're responding exactly the way a brain shaped by millions of years of scarcity would respond to a stimulus engineered specifically to exceed anything that brain was built to handle. That's not weakness. That's biology meeting an environment it never evolved to face. Some researchers point to small strategies that work with this wiring instead of against it. Removing the exaggerated stimulus from easy reach, the way you'd remove a goose from an oversized fake egg, matters more than raw willpower ever could. Portioning food before you start eating short-circuits the open-ended reward loop, because your brain responds differently to a bowl with a visible end than to a bag with an invisible one. None of this means processed food is evil or that craving it makes you weak. It means your brain is doing exactly what it was built to do, in a world flooded with signals it was never built to resist. Think about the last time you told yourself you'd stop after one. You weren't lying to yourself out of laziness. You were a goose looking at an oversized egg, and for one moment, ancient instinct mistook an engineered product for the very thing it evolved to chase. And maybe that's the real answer. Not that you lack discipline. Not that something is wrong with you. Just that somewhere behind your ribs, a very old brain is still doing the only job it ever learned, seeking calories, chasing abundance, and reaching for one more, long after one more stopped meaning survival. You open the bag telling yourself you'll have just one. Now you know why you never do.